Okay, YouTube. I want to do a video here on for a beginner bike. First of all, let me clarify: there is no such bike. Any bike you get on, you can get hurt whether you're experienced or not. You just got to really think about what you're doing before you do it. A lot of people think that motorcycles are just fun and games, but there's a lot of things to remember if you want to ride as safely as you can. There's things you check out before you even get on the bike every time. But as far as a beginner bike, you know what? If you wanted to take the most educated approach, you'd probably want to go and find a motorcycle school to go to, a training school. I don't know many people that have done that, but it would make sense to do something like that, and of course learn and crash on their bikes. You're probably looking at about a $300, $400 adventure, just depending on where you're at. That would probably be the most educated approach you could take. Most schools will allow you to get your license through them. Granted, you don't completely destroy their machines, but that would be the most educated way you could go about it. If you're a bigger individual, obviously a 250 is probably not going to be a sufficient enough motorcycle for you, an efficient enough motorcycle for you to start on. A 250, you're probably going to bog it down if you're over 200 pounds. However, the new Ninja 250s, they've improved quite a bit. But still, if you're 230, 240, 6'5" or some crap, you're probably not going to want to start out on a little 250. You're going to look ridiculous, and you're more than likely going to destroy the bike. But however, if sport bikes are what catch your eye and what you're interested in, I would advise you not to buy one for your first bike. Go buy a big cruiser, man. Not something new. You should be able to get a nice cruiser for a couple of grand. I wouldn't advise starting out on a Harley. Maybe something like a little Honda Shadow or Nighthawk or something like that. If you're a bigger individual. If you're a smaller guy, you'd probably want to start out on a 250. But keep in mind, anybody can get hurt at any time on any bike. It's just a matter of thinking about what you do before you do it. Think it through. If you're paranoid and tense on a motorcycle, you ride a bicycle or something, man. For a little bit till you get the feel of riding something down, and then start out small. Step up. Definitely don't go out and buy you a first generation ZX10 or an R1 or a Kawas or Gixxer 1000. Stay away from leader bikes if you don't have any experience at all. You can get hurt very seriously, or you could hurt somebody else. So this is not my first bike. Just to give you a little insight on what I started out on a Honda XL 185. I was 17 years old when I bought that bike. Nice little bike, man. It wasn't streetable anymore when I got it. It wasn't very well taken care of. I really didn't know a whole lot about bikes then, so I didn't take care of it. I took it out in the pasture and beat the shit out of it. But that was the first bike I ever owned. It didn't take long to burn it up. I was riding pretty stupid out in the pasture, doing jumps and shit. But I got hurt on that bike. That was the first bike that I ever got hurt on. And it was my first bike. Twisted my knee. I still have problems today because of that bike. I was hauling ass coming back up toward the house, and I was on some wet grass, and I just thought I could slam on my back brake, and it just bike came right out from under me, no problem, you know, and I just fell right on my knee, twisted it all up. It hurt like hell, man. But I picked the bike back up and went back in the pasture and rode it for another 20 minutes before I brought it back home, you know, just so that I wouldn't be scared to get back on it. But my second bike, let's see, what was my second bike? I had it was a Honda something, EX something 250. It was the first street bike I had. And I learned a lot on that bike, a lot of what I could do and what I couldn't do. Unfortunately, my mechanic skills hadn't improved very much, so that bike got burned up too. I just wasn't educated on how to take care of them. From there, I went to a little bit older bike. It was a 920 Virago. It was a nice little riding bike. I think I paid $750 for that bike, and I got my money worth out of it, I can tell you that. That bike just kept going and kept going and kept going. It was going good until my little brother power washed it. I don't know what he was thinking. I let him take off on it and went to power wash it for some reason. And I just never would start after that. But anyway, several years later, I wound up getting a F3 Honda CBR 600. The bike scared the shit out of me. It was a nice little riding bike, but it, you know, it was the first time I'd ever been 160 miles an hour. You know, it was fast for me back then, and I was inexperienced, and I'm very thankful I wasn't hurt on that bike. I had that bike for probably about 6 months, and it got stolen. I was a little naive when I had it. So yeah, it got stolen. After that, I bought a ZX6R. And that bike and me had some fun. I got thrown in jail over that bike. I've still got tickets over that bike that I need to pay. But I had some fun on that bike. That's where I really got my experience in riding fast and hitting the curves and stuff like that. I sold that bike. I was probably around, I don't know, maybe 26, 27, something like that. And I just bought this bike here. I'm 34 now. So that give you a little insight on how I've stepped up over the years. You know, I don't ride near as crazy as I used to. I do when I get out on the curves. You know, I get on it on this bike because you know, it was designed to do that. You know, at my experience level and my mechanic knowledge has improved quite a bit since when I first started. So there's a lot that goes into being able to ride a leader bike and be as safe as you can on it. You need to first understand, you know, how the bike works and how to properly maintain it. You know, a lot of people go out and buy a bike and it comes with a operator's manual and they never even read the thing. You know, it's very important because there's important things that you need to know. You know, tire pressure and stuff like that, or it seems like, you know, it wouldn't really matter, but it means a lot on these bikes. You know, tire pressure, your chain, those are things that you need to check every time you ride it. You know, before you get on it. Lube your chain, you know, make sure there's no bad spots in your chain, make sure you know, your tires have the right air pressure in them, you know, stuff like that. And it takes a while to learn all that kind of stuff, you know. So, you know, your approach to motorcycles should always be slow and cautious, but not paranoid. You know, paranoid can get you hurt too. But, you know, have fun with them. But be cautious, you know, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know anything about them, you know, and they'll run right over you, and you know, because they just don't understand. You know, they're not thinking about you. So you got to think about everything when you're on one of these, not just yourself. And it requires some bit of multitasking, you know, to ride a bike. Not a lot, but you know, if you're the type of person that can't chew gum and walk at the same time, you probably need to stay off a motorcycle. Period. But you know, when you get a little bit more advanced and feel like stepping up, you know, step up from a cruiser to a 600. You know, that would be my advice. You know, a lot of people think, well, I'll just go grab a 600, you know, and start out on that. And I don't think that's the best idea. Most of the newer 600cc bikes are running, you know, low 10s in a quarter mile. We're talking, you know, 0 to 60 in probably 3 seconds or better. So I wouldn't advise starting out on one of those. However, you know, I know there's some people out there who, you know, with the opinion that, hey, you got to start somewhere. Well, you're right. You got to start somewhere, but just be careful. And the best thing to do is always educate yourself on what you're doing before you do it. You know, thinking about going and buying a 600, you know, research the bike you're going to buy. Find out, you know, what kind of power it makes. You know, what's going to happen when you twist that throttle. You know, that's what you need to know. You don't want to twist the throttle and then find out. You want to know before you twist that throttle pretty much what's going to happen. So that's my best advice to a first-time buyer on a motorcycle. I hope this video is helpful. Leave your comments, and I'll get back with you and help you in any way I can. Thanks for watching.